Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Our topic today is wandering in persons living with dementia, and we thank you for joining us. These complimentary webinars are brought to you through a collaboration and sponsorship with Care Choices, Hospice and Palliative Services, O'Connor Mortuary, Caring Companions at Home, and Alzheimer's Orange County. And my name is Kim Bailey, and I'm a gerontologist at Al's OC, and I'll be your host today. And I'm happy to be here with all of you. Our sponsors are providing these webinars to you as a service to the community on topics that are beneficial to anyone who cares for or works with older adults. We hope you find today's presentation informative and useful. And we're bringing back one of our popular speakers from the past. Today we have Erin Palposi with us, and I'll tell you about her in just a few minutes. She is Erin Palposa. She's an executive director employed by Life Care Services in Mission Viejo, California. She's a gerontologist with 10 years of experience specializing in dementia care and supporting the needs of older individuals. And she also advised master's level social worker at Silverado Memory Care Communities nationwide. She received her bachelor's degree in cognitive science from UC San Diego, after which she worked in dementia research in a joint UCSD and Veterans Hospital venture, researching mild cognitive impairment in older veterans. Erin obtained her master's degree in gerontology from USC and became the graduate researcher on a joint Silverado Senior Living USC study exploring the effects of daylight in reducing depression in memory impaired adults. Erin also holds a residential care for the elderly administrator certification and a dementia care specialist certification. She also completed Advanced Caesar's Leadership Development Program. Erin's passion for older adults experiencing memory loss stems from supporting a grandparent with dementia in a caregiver role during her adolescent years. Erin has extensive experience hosting support groups for various populations, including family members of individuals with memory decline. She also participates in speaking engagements on executive functioning and cognition. And so, with all that said, I'm pleased to turn the program over to our talented presenter, Erin. Thank you so much for being with us today, Erin.
Thank you, Kim. It's wonderful to be back here at Alzheimer's Orange County. So thank you for the invitation and welcome everyone. I look forward to diving into this topic with you today. Let me just get the slides going here. So wandering in persons with dementia. I wanted to start off with an overview on what is dementia. It's an umbrella term that describes a variety of diseases and conditions that cause damage to the brain, resulting in loss of cognitive ability. It's really important to note it's not a part of the normal aging process, although age and health contribute to risk factors for this. Dementia is slow and progressive. It starts with mild symptoms and worsens over time. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. It makes up for about 60 to 80% of dementias. There's a large umbrella of dementias, and we're going to look at a few of the different varieties. There's two types overall. There's irreversible and reversible. So under the irreversible side, Alzheimer's disease, which we already mentioned, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, Pick's disease, vascular, which includes strokes, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, CTE, and many more. There's over 120 distinct types of dementia. For reversible, there could be dementia from depression, drug interactions, nutritional deficiencies, thyroid disease, or infections. Now let's take a look at some of the changes associated with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So here's some of the most common and more typically associated with this disease. Loss of memory is very prominent. Language and communication changes, right? This could be mixing words. Sometimes we hear from family members that their loved one is calling them by um, a different name, right? They're their spouse, but they're referring to them as their daughter or vice versa. Loss of executive functions. This includes reasoning, so the ability to process choices logically, judgment as well, so correctly identifying options timely, and then abstract thought, so not being able to think about things that aren't present. Additionally, there's visual spatial perception changes. These are very common, especially in the middle of the disease progress. This could be someone who is watching the news and sees that there's a fire occurring somewhere in Northern California, and they might think the fire is actually occurring in their reality in their city at this time. So, not being able to distinguish that as easily. And of course, behavioral changes. This one's pretty common. A lot of times we hear from families, they'll say, Dad was never like this, right? Or you might think this, oh, mom would never do this, or my husband or my spouse would never do this. That's when you know it's truly part of the disease process. And it's really important just to try and keep in mind as you're going through this journey with your loved one, or if you're a caregiver, it's really the disease, it's not their fault, right? This disease progression is really outside of their control. So let's take a look at what wandering looks like in people with dementia. 6 out of 10 people with dementia will wander. That's a lot. Anyone who has memory loss and is able to find a way to transport themselves, so it could be walking, could be in a car, maybe a bus, is at risk for wandering. It can occur at any stage of the disease, and there's often brain changes that can cause a person with dementia to become confused and disoriented, even in a familiar place. You might find someone who switches stores inadvertently, or in the case of one of my friends, her and her husband would go to a restaurant every Friday night, was date night, and they sat down to eat, and her husband got up to go to the restroom and 20 minutes passed, 30 minutes passed. Around 45, she finally got up and went to look for him. And as it turns out, when he had come out of the restroom, he forgot that he had come to the restaurant with his wife and had found a seat at the bar, had ordered a new glass of wine and a whole entire dinner, and just completely forgot that he was there with his wife. So it's very confusing and very disorienting to watch that. And if you can imagine on their end to experience the confusion of being in a familiar place and not necessarily remembering if you're coming or going. Here's some of the reasons for wandering. Confusion. So we find there's a lot of problems with memory loss that often cause confusion and disorientation, which can lead to a person being able to unable to recognize where they are or remember why they are there. So they might go to someone's house, and after dinner or during dinner, they might want to go home because home is more familiar to them versus the inability to process the space around them. And if you think about the way the brain stores memories, for Alzheimer's disease in particular, a quick tangent on facts, the hippocampus, which stores all of your working memory and helps store new information and put it into short-term and then long-term memory, by the time you're starting to see the initial symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, the hippocampus, most of the time, is already about 80% or 90% damaged. And so the 10 years or more before these symptoms start to present in early stages of Alzheimer's disease, their brain is already not able to input information as easily as it did 20, 30, or other decades ago. So, those young grandchildren that we have, if our brain is not able to input memories of them as easily, oftentimes Memories of new grandchildren are some of the first to go, whereas someone who's in their long-term memory, like a spouse or children, adult children, are stored in there a little bit longer and easier to remember. Another reason for wandering, they could be searching for something. People who wander are often looking for something familiar, especially if they are in a new environment. They may need to satisfy a basic need, such as hunger, thirst, or going to the restroom, but they've forgotten what to do or where to go. Now, depending on where they're at in their disease process, this could go far back as a childhood home, right? They might be looking for their 5-year-old daughter who is actually an adult child at the age of 50, right? Or they might be wondering, where do I find my place of work that I used to be at? Another reason is they might be escaping from a real or perceived threat. So the person may become frightened by a noise, a stranger, or something they've interpreted as frightening. Wandering may be the result of stress, anxiety, or too much stimulation, which drives the person away. I had a family tell me before they moved into a community, dad was a huge football player. And I won't say which team, but just imagine that it's your dad and it's Thanksgiving time and you're ready to watch one of the parade games. And dad's been excited about this for the past 25 years. This was always a tradition. And this year, when everyone comes over and you've got a house crammed full of 30 people and dad can't stay in the room, right? This is his favorite thing. He looks forward to this and the appetizers and the fellowship and everything all year long. And it's too overwhelming for him. There's too much noise, there's too much going on. And he goes into his study or his office or just goes up to the bedroom just to get away from it. This is sometimes what we talk about when we mention that that's too overstimulating for someone who's experiencing cognitive decline. Other reasons for wandering, they could be reliving the past. Wandering at the same time every day may be linked to a lifelong pattern or responsibility, such as a work or a scheduled routine. I remember when I was working at Silverado, one of our most beloved stories we would tell was of a gentleman who was having trouble reorienting to a AM schedule. He was up all night, wandered around the community, and eventually one of the associates asked a family member of his and said, "What did he do for a living?" And turns out he was a night guard. And so we got him a clipboard and a night guard hat and a flashlight, and he thought he was still at work. And so he was reliving the past and he was right back at work and he had a wonderful time. And once we were able to understand where some of this wandering came from, it was no longer an issue anymore. And he really enjoyed his time. Another reason could be agitation. So some individuals find it very comforting to constantly stay in motion. They may be restless or make repetitive movements or pace in one area. Could also be a side effect of medications as well. Sometimes it's just that feeling of being unsettled, right? Your brain's not connecting thoughts properly. And so it doesn't really know, why did I come in here? Where should I be going? What should I be doing? Another reason for wandering is boredom or lack of stimulation. So they may have become restless due to inactivity or just simply maybe searching, looking for a person, a place, or an item that was lost.
Okay, it is time for our first poll question. And so let's see what it is. Wandering at the same time every day may be linked to a lifelong pattern or schedule. Once again, wandering at the same time every day may be linked to a lifelong pattern or schedule. Go ahead and quickly choose your response. Again, if you have any difficulty at all with the poll, you can put your answer into the chat. All right, we'll give it one more minute. It looks like a lot of you have participated. Wandering at the same time every day may be linked to a lifelong pattern or schedule. Is that true or false? Okay, let's go ahead and take a look and see how everybody did. Looks like you got it right 100%. So good job, everybody. And back to you, Erin.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, next let's look at what drives a desire to wander. And we love this quote. I'm going to read it. For many, the desire to leave reflects a lack of fulfillment of well-being within the living space. When that need is fulfilled, the desire is often eliminated. Repeated attempts to stand, walk, explore, or exit should trigger discussions that look at these as goal-driven actions rather than disease-driven ones. And that's a wonderful approach to this. There's quite a few dangers, of course, of wandering, right? So the risks of wandering alone, not only becoming lost, but just the confusion and disorientation. Sometimes this can lead to injuries, dehydration, or even death from exposure to harsh weather or various other safety risks, right? This heat that we experience now in the summers that lingers into the fall. For older adults, even just being outside for a half hour or an hour or more can really quickly dehydrate them and make a big impact on their health that's negative. They can be mistaken for being on drugs or alcohol if encountered by someone who doesn't know about dementia. And the worst possible scenario, which we hope never happens, but unfortunately does at times, is they might become victimized or being taken advantage of by someone who wishes to do them harm. So, how can we prevent wandering? Obviously, we need to prepare. There may not be a warning before the person with dementia wanders for the first time. So they might need to have more supervision. It's important that we don't leave the person with dementia at home. I know this is particularly difficult, especially if you are a sole caregiver of someone who's experiencing dementia and cognitive decline, and you sometimes the disease creeps up on us, right? You just start to fill in little gaps. Oh, here's your toothbrush. Oh, here's your lunch. Oh, let's put the clothes over here, not on the bed. So it you just kind of adjust day on, day out, and sometimes when your kids come over and all of a sudden they'll see it, or if you haven't been with someone with cognitive impairment for a week or two and you come back and you say, "Oh my goodness, this is really now apparent and it's hitting me in the face and I see this and I didn't see it before." So sometimes the disease can creep up on us in that way. We also want to ensure basic needs are met, such as toileting, hunger, and thirst. And just, I'm sure some of you have already experienced, unfortunately, sometimes cognitive confusion comes with a strong obstinance, I guess would be the best word, to want to stay independent or not wanting to be reminded of a simple task, right? It might feel like it's obstinance, but imagine ourselves if you have someone constantly reminding you, don't you remember this? Don't you remember that? And so we always try and encourage people just take a deep breath and try and make it a task that is a parallel task that you can do in tandem, right? So instead of reminding your loved one or whoever you're working with, you have to go to the restroom or you need to brush your teeth after breakfast. Did you forget to do that, right? We want to make this a joint task. Let's use the restroom before lunch. Or why don't we use the restroom before we go outside? Or, hey, I think it's a little cold. Why don't we put on a jacket, right? So that way it doesn't make them feel like they're always being told what to do. It also helps reduce a lot of anxiety and some of that agitation that we talked about. Um, I wanted to share a quick story. The person I was thinking about the most when I was going through these slides in preparation, there was a woman who had brought her loved one to a community, and she said, "You know, my husband's been walking 5 miles a day for the past 15 years, and last week was the first time that he didn't come home from this walk. He's normally gone for an hour, hour and a half, and it was 103 outside, and he just didn't come home, and I had to go find him. And that was the day that I realized I needed more assistance. Right? So we just never know when those routines start to break. Other examples of working on prevention for wandering, medications, it's really good to check with our doctor to see if they may be having an impact. right? We're not Google doctors unless you're on here and you are a healthcare physician, then thank you for helping the rest of us. But it's don't go down that rabbit hole, right? Just see if you can call your doctor. If it's difficult to bring your loved one to the doctors, which is often the case with dementia because they don't want someone poking around and seeing if there's anything wrong, right? It's very embarrassing and belittling. So sometimes just giving him a quick call, hey, I need to talk to you about this. Might want to check on those. Others is visual cues. So signs and photos on cabinets or doors or drawers, anything that can help assist with wayfinding really helps a lot. Also, we want to try and remove items near an exit, such as a purse, suitcase, coats, or keys, which can remind people of leaving, even shoes. And sometimes it gets to the point where we really need a bigger distraction. I remember at one of our communities, someone had put up a TV for someone who kept just wandering. They just wanted to go on a long walk, and we captured them easily, not captured, but we captivated their brain with using their favorite TV show. They loved I Love Lucy, and so we put a TV right by the door and a chair. And so when anytime they would head that way, they would sit down and really just enjoyed the show, and we were able to redirect them out to another door that had a garden that they could walk around freely. So that was really always a sweet story, and the family really loved that we had that option for them rather than just trying to redirect them with a snack or something else. Some other ways we can look into preventing wandering. Contented involvement. We want to help avoid boredom by engaging the person with right-sized or repetitive activities that are neither too easy nor challenging. Now, this you might be saying, Erin, I don't have the time to think of this, right? So we just want to, how about elaborating on things that we already do at home, right? There's a utensil drawer in almost everybody's home, unless you don't have utensils, right? So what about taking those out, mixing them all up, and having someone sort the utensils back together again, right? Or taking the towels out of the cupboard and having them fold towels for an activity. Those are things that we're used to doing, right? It could be dusting around the house, just tasks that we're used to doing on a daily basis and that they've probably done their whole lives, right? And so sometimes those, just to be able to be valuable and to be useful around the house, really goes a long way than rather than trying to make someone do something that doesn't really make sense to them. We want to continue to seek out different ways. How can we provide a calm environment? So an environment that's safe and uncluttered with quiet surroundings that don't cause overstimulation or agitation. I will say that a lot of times we hear from families that mail or finances or bills really triggers a lot of stress, right? Because if it's something that they're having difficulty sorting through in their brain, that could lead to wandering around or sometimes even pacing, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Also, we want to keep doors locked, so consider a key deadbolt or additional lock that is placed high or down low, additional to the one that's already on the keyhole. And a quick story I had of another resident when I was at a community, and they kept trying to go out the gate. And they were very able-bodied and just all days and nights. And so I was young. I was a social worker at the time in that role. And let's name him Bob, just for safekeeping of his name. I said, Bob, where are you going? What do you need? What can I help you with? And he looked at me in the face. This had been after 2 weeks of trying to leave. And he looked at me and he said, my glasses are broken and I need to go fix them. Right. So sometimes it's just asking them, what are you searching for? What are you seeking? And trying to resolve that unmet need could be simpler than we think. Here's some other special techniques for wandering prevention. Camouflage posters can make doors look like bookshelves or something other than a door. You can paint or wallpaper the same color as the wall. Sometimes that can make the doors disappear. I love the idea of the bookshelves. I always encourage people and families, put a little chair there, put some actual books that they can sit down and make it a nook, right? Make it something that's a useful stopping point for them, rather than them just kind of circling around. Sometimes even going as far as a stop sign or a do not enter sign on the door helps discourage the person from leaving. And loosely fitting doorknob covers prevent doorknobs from turning, right? This one would be very frustrating. So if you could imagine, if you're the person trying to leave and you just can't get a grip on it, right? If you're at this point, this is really a band-aid fix. This means we need to think of something else, right? So going back to those techniques of what in the house can they do? Do they like to garden? Do they want to be outside? Do we need to get some more stimulation? This is really a trigger point, an aha moment for us to say, I think I need to get some additional ideas in. Other home safety devices for wandering prevention could be making sure that we have locked gates around the yard, a place to wander safely, such as a fenced-in yard or meaningful wandering corridors, an announcing system that chimes when doors open, latches that limit how much a window can be opened, lights that come on automatically in the dark. This is really important, right? So as our brain experiences cognitive decline, it affects all parts of our body, right? Including our eyes. And so with most dementias, our eyes lose the ability to close and open our irises quick enough to adjust from a dark space to a light space. So making sure that pathways are lit around the house is really going to be key for someone who does wander around. Stair gates to help prevent falls. There's also driveway sensors. Technology is getting so advanced, that it's really helpful to help people adjust in their own home at this time. Also, there's wireless home security system or motion sensing cameras that notify when the person gets up at night. Now, I will say for cameras, if you can imagine you yourself in your own home right now, and if someone came in and put a camera in, it's going to be a little bit unnerving especially if you know what it looks like. So I always recommend try and hide it behind something or make it not as visible. We want our loved ones to be safe, but also we don't want to increase their own anxiety, by being able to see something that might be motion sense following them around the room at night. Can also enlist our neighborhood help, right? So you might live far away from your loved one, or you might need some extra eyes on. And so just talking with your neighbors and community members, if the person has a tendency to wander, that's really important. Everybody wants to be helpful. And while these conversations are not easy, we would want someone to offer us the same, to be helpful to their loved one as well. So sometimes that opportunity comes to us before others. And so this is one of those times when it's really important to reach out for help. Can also ask them to contact you if they see the person out alone. And it's really important, even if you spend a little bit extra time trying to figure out exactly if the wandering is time dependent, right? So if it's always in the evening time, that might be a great chance or great opportunity for us to get a private caregiver to come and sit with them, right? So sometimes you have big life changes like having a spouse, and then if your spouse passes away, and maybe the spouse who passed away is the one who was doing the caregiving. And so now they're home alone and they're more anxious, right? So we are social creatures of habit and we like to see someone else around. So they could simply be wandering, trying to find someone else to talk to or trying to find someone to tell them it's okay, you're in your own home, you're safe. And so something as simple as having someone come and eat dinner with your loved one really makes a big difference and is a huge comfort piece to them. We mentioned this earlier, but pacing can lead to wandering and vice versa. So wandering is more slow and steady. It's not panicked. It's just kind of walking around. It's not at a high stress level, whereas pacing is a deliberate behavior that could be a sign of anxiety, distress, agitation, overstimulation of noise or social interaction, dehydration, or pain. It's so important that we never ignore pacing. It's a sign of an unmet need and something that needs to be addressed immediately. Now, it might be counterintuitive, but if someone's in pain, they have back pain, right? We would think, oh, they're not going to want to walk around. Of course they don't have pain, right? They would be sitting if they had pain. Well, the pain is making them anxious, and so they're going to try and figure out how to resolve it, right? It's not like they want to walk. So the walking actually is going to make pain worse for someone. So if we hear a lot of times, oh, my mom had back pain, or my dad had knee pain, and then he got dementia, and then it went away. Right. So those are the conversations we need to think about if there's been changes, right? So if you know mom's always taken Tylenol her whole life from an injury from when she was younger, when you were a kid, or whatever the incident was, we don't want to trigger their fight or flight mode to put their body into that. And the way I try to describe this to new families who are experiencing this is imagine if you have a toothache and your friends want to invite you out to do something. You're not going to want to do anything until that toothache is resolved, right? And so asking our loved ones to sit calmly or to relax or watch a TV show when they're in pain or have an unmet need is really unrealistic of us. And so that's something that we can try and help them resolve. So even though we hope you never need this, here's some precautions and planning ahead. So if a person wanders and become lost, it's really, really important for us to act quickly, have a plan, and know who to call for assistance. We want to ensure, like we said, that friends and neighbors know who to contact if they see the person out by themselves. Keeping an updated photo and a list of places where the person is likely to wander, such as a past job location, their favorite restaurant, or other favorite places in the area. People who wander may be difficult to find because they often behave unpredictably. They may not call for help, and they also may not respond to searchers' calls. Contacting the Medical Alert Foundation to learn more about the various emergency response services and membership plans they offer at medicalert.org is also another option. And a bit later, we'll discuss some of the devices that help with location tracking as well.
Okay, it's time for another poll question. And this question is a true false. People who wander may not call for help or respond to searchers' calls. Is that true or false? People who wander may not call out for help or respond to a searcher's calls. Go ahead and give us your response. People who wander may not call for help or respond to searchers' calls. Is that true or false? Okay, I think everybody's had a chance to weigh in. Let's go ahead and release those results. And it looks like almost everybody got that right. So good job, attendees. And back to you, Miss Erin. Thank you.
Thank, thanks, Kim. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. We're going to look at how do we prevent wandering at a care community. So, of course, at the time of admission, we want to really dig deep and see if the resident's family, if they've noticed a history of wandering about their loved ones, or if there's patterns of wandering. it's important to make the family feel comfortable at this time, right? Because they could be very nervous. Oh, maybe they won't admit mom or dad or my spouse if I tell them about this. So just reassuring them, listen, we just want what's best for your loved one. We want to be able to help them. And so if we have this history, that helps us take better note of that. And most of the time they will share. Staff should also familiarize themselves with the new resident through interview assessments or lifestyle biography. So, for example, knowing the individual's history and what they enjoy or what they've enjoyed in the past, right? Mom or dad could be more sedentary now, but what was really meaningful to them? That's really important for us to learn. And then we also want to make sure we design individualized person centered activities that are meaningful and appropriate for that person. They might have been a painter by trade, and maybe when they started having cognitive decline, they stopped painting. And that's a great opportunity for us to get to again. Can you imagine the faces of the family when they come in and see mom sitting with a caregiver and maybe they're painting watercolors at a table near the garden or right inside the door? And they just think them thinking themselves, oh my gosh, mom forgot that she used to paint, and just seeing her do this again. What a wonderful memory that brings back of something that their loved one can participate in. And then it's still there, right? That desire to still participate and to still have enjoyment. That's a wonderful way to show families that. So we can also help reduce confusion for new and existing residents and help make sure all destinations are clearly marked. So I love this, having a sign for the kitchen, having a sign for the restrooms. Bathrooms can also be marked with a picture of a toilet too, right? So visual cues. Resident stores can be marked with their name in large print. And maybe you have a sign for the dining room or dinner's being served or, painting here, right? So different signs and cues that help prompt them to know where to go. And you can look at some of these signs on the Alzheimer's store link that's here. We want to make sure to take extra caution during shift changes as residents may follow departing staff or visitors out the door. My best suggestion is to train all of your staff, so not just the ones who might work in a memory care neighborhood or location in your community, is to train the front desk, the activities, the janitors, maintenance, housekeeping, everybody, top to bottom, because closing a simple door behind you can really make the big difference for that loved one's health. We also want to consider scheduling special activities that are engaging during shift changes. That's such a great idea. And then posting photos of new residents in the break rooms for associates. We also post them at the front desk, and we make sure that we send out an email for all new move-ins to make sure all the staff is aware and that they know who to reach out to. So your executive director, maybe your director of nursing, should they see any wandering ASAP, right? So we want to catch it first when it's in the wandering stage and not when it goes to elopement stage. It's really important that we use gentle methods when responding to wandering, right? So people who are experiencing dementia, they read body language and facial expressions very well. So remaining calm, approaching from the front, right? We don't want to sneak up behind them. Hey, let me tap you on the shoulder. That's going to startle them. Speaking in a slow, soft, comforting voice. Another thing I always train my managers and my team is palms up, right? So coming to someone and saying, how can I help you? Their brain might take a little bit extra time to process verbally and audibly what I'm saying. But if they see someone coming towards them with this offering of, I'm not a threat and I'm here to help you, they might be more likely to have a conversation with you and maybe even calm down if they're having a small anxious moment. Physical restraints are definitely not an option. This causes a premature loss of ambulation, weakness, poor circulation, incontinence, and poor quality of life. And so something that you want to check on, I always tell our new nurses, go in and check on different shifts, right? Check on the PM shift, check on the overnight shift. We want to make sure, especially at dinner time with something that seems so helpless, right? So having a chair pushed in really tight to the dining room table so that one of the residents can't scoot back at all, that's technically considered a physical restraint. Or someone who is in a living room chair, a recliner, and they can't physically get out of the recliner. They're not strong enough and they keep trying to get up. That's also a physical restraint. It might not seem like it, but if someone's wanting to go somewhere, they're going to use a lot of effort, and a lot of times exerting that effort will lead to injury, as we've mentioned. Chemical restraints, medications, also are not an option as they may cause loss of balance, sedation, falls, and serious side effects such as paranoia and hallucination. So it's really important to check. I know personally how frustrating it is to be a caregiver at home for your loved one. And sometimes when you make that decision to move them to a community, you just want you just want them to be calm. Why don't we give them something for their anxiety, to help them not move as much anymore, right? That doesn't get the underlying unmet need, right? Of them seeking for something, all of those items that we discussed earlier in the presentation. And so it's just not a great option ever to use medications to dampen our loved ones or our residents' abilities, right? Because that can really affect their quality of life as well as injure them. Other ways we can use gentle methods when responding to wandering, distracting and redirect. So focusing their attention on something special or something they might have an interest in or a new goal. So when we talked about earlier, what do we do when they move in? What kind of discovery are we working on with the family? This is a great time to figure out what they did. So if they were an architect, we used to have an architect and he just wanted to stay busy. He thought he was working. And so we went online. I'm not an architect. I didn't know what to do. So I went online and printed off a bunch of blueprints and put them in a binder and gave them to him and said, "Do you mind looking at? I don't know what I'm looking at here. Can you explain this to me?" And I found his old college where he received his degree in architecture. And I would pull up the college on the website and have him show me around his campus. So just simple things like that. Maybe you have a retired nurse amongst you as one of your residents. You can give them a stethoscope and see if they want to go check some vitals of the staff, or maybe they can attend one of your nurse or your caregiver meetings that change a shift and ask them if they have any questions. And so different ways to help engage our residents and our loved ones. So you can also ask if they're hungry and ready for a snack, or if they would like to look at photos or listen to music. I know sometimes families get protective of wanting photos, but I just tell them, you know what? Text me, take a picture of your old photo that you don't want to go missing. Text it to me. I will print it out. I'll put it into a photo album. I'll be happy to help because I want your loved one to feel comfortable and that they have something that's going to trigger some wonderful memories for them. If there is a secure area, accompanying the person on a walk. So, uh, one of the tips I always tell my staff is to let's try and get the top 5 details about our new resident, right? What do they love or what do they dislike? As the person you see here in this photo is gently touching someone on the shoulder, we had a resident. Excuse me, we had a resident who moved in recently who did not want to be touched. And so that was really important for us to go around and make sure to tell people, hey, touch is not comforting for this resident. They're actually going to feel threatened and it's going to make it worse, right? So again, just approaching with those open hands makes a big difference to share with all of our staff. So when wandering is a daily routine for a resident, there are unfortunately some types of dementia that may cause changes like excessive walking. And this is really It's really difficult to watch, but if you can even imagine how exhausting this might even be for the resident themselves, right? So if a person is desiring to walk, we need to implement a really well thought out care plan to ensure that we're hydrating well, that we're using foods. They have sturdy shoes, not slippers. We need something with a back around the heel, and chairs available to sit down and rest, right? So maybe we're using ravioli and meatballs that they can hold instead of just spaghetti. Um, Also checking to make sure they're not leaning to one side. Leaning to one side is a really clear indicator that a resident or your loved one is dehydrated. So what do we do if a person is missing, right? We're going to act as quickly as possible. The missing person may walk quickly or find another mode of transportation like a car or bus. We want to first notify the police. This should be treated as a top priority emergency, right? We want all hands on deck for this. Alert others if the person is part of a bracelet identification program. Most states do have a silver alert public notification system to broadcast information out about missing persons. I know California does. So we also want to check with neighbors, local shops, restaurants, that favorite list that we made earlier with our loved one's photo, making sure that we're distributing that. And then also knowing what are the dangerous areas around the community and check those first, such as a busy intersection, creeks, factories, overpasses, bridges, and steep terrains. And we also want to make sure we have someone who's in a car searching and also people on foot searching so we can cover more ground. Additionally, it's really important for us to have photographs, including a recent headshot, updated list of the person's identifying features, the age, sex, height, weight, blood type, and dental work. Any other important info like health conditions, medications, dietary need. For police dogs, we can keep an unwashed article of the person's clothing and kept in a sealed bag. This will help the police dog search for the resident or loved one, and a list of places where they're most likely to go.
Okay, let's take a look at the next poll question. And it is, if a person with dementia is missing, do not notify the police. Is that true or false? If a person's missing, should we notify the police? Okay. This one should go pretty quickly. Everyone, go ahead and weigh in. If a person with dementia is missing, do not notify the police. Okay. And I think we can go ahead and release those results. And it looks like everybody got that one, or the majority got one. So fantastic job, everyone. And back to you, Erin. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, as we wrap up, we're going to take a look at some of the devices and resources for preventing wandering. So there's low technology such as ID bracelets. So these enable emergency responders to easily obtain health and personal information when needed, such as medical alert. And clothing labels are great. These can be attached to items of clothing to assist in identification. Permanent markers don't cost anything and they're very easy to use. And you can also get personalized iron-on labels can be found online. Sometimes at communities just let families know because they get nervous about iron-on labels. What if I need to move them home or whatnot? They iron right off. So don't stress about that and just let them know. Also, there's GPS technology, so personal GPS tracking devices in the form of watches, wristbands, necklaces, keychains, or other wearable devices that attach to clothing. Devices vary from GPS tracking to personal emergency responses with one button assistance, so like a pendant, for example. Most rely on internet or cellular and radio technology. Some do include a two-way voice communication or fall detection. And then also GPS watches and wristbands can be best for those who are comfortable wearing a watch and not inclined to remove it. This is a great holiday gift or a birthday gift for someone, right? Just make sure when you're setting this for someone who's older and used to analog watches that you change the front. This display looks really nice, but they might just want to see the old minute hand and hour hand on there, right? These are less likely than a fob device to get lost and can be less stigmatizing than a lanyard or a medical alert device. And TheoraCare is an example of where you can find these at. Lastly, other GPS technology options. So a GPS insole, these are wonderful, can be inserted into almost any shoe, uses cellular connectivity to send location updates to the monitoring system. And then smartphone applications. Most of our smartphones have real-time GPS tracking. So there's a ton of apps available. Most of them are at no cost. And you can visit your phone's app store or speak with your cell phone provider.
Okay, that does bring us to the end of our presentation. Um, Erin, thank you so much. That was so informative and educational. Good, useful information for all of us, whether we're home caregivers or professionals. So, a couple things. I just want to remind everyone of the importance of being aware of implicit biases, otherwise known as unconscious stereotypes. A best practice is a person-centered approach, which Erin mentioned already, where we view each person that we care for as an individual with unique needs and preferences, and we treat them, of course, with dignity and respect, even when they're very different from ourselves. If we always listen carefully and respectfully so that we understand their perspectives, values, and preferences, we can build trust and, of course, provide the highest quality of care for those individuals. So at this time, if you have any questions for our presenter, you can go ahead and type them into the chat box in your taskbar. And it looks like we're getting a couple of questions now. So everyone, please stay with us. But before we go to the Q&A, I just want to go ahead and thank our sponsors once again. O'Connor Mortuary, Care Choices, Hospice and Palliative Services, and Comparing Companions at Home, as well as, of course, Alzheimer's Orange County. So thank you, sponsors. We're really grateful for your support, your ongoing support each month. And then also, I want to remind everybody about our next webinar, which it's scheduled for October 14th. I can't believe that we're talking about October already. And we've got the topic of grief through the stages of dementia, and that will be presented by Becky LaMacca, another very popular speaker with this series. So watch for that flyer and also be sure to forward it to anyone else who might be interested. And also, don't forget that you can always access our website at www.alzoc.org to learn about the many classes and workshops and events that we have available on an ongoing basis. So with that, let me go ahead and look in our question box. It looks like what do you recommend to do for people that wander or pace, then have an injury and they're still trying to get up and wander?
Injury is probably one of the most difficult challenges with this disease progression because it really doesn't override the brain, right? It's still there. It's really hard to talk someone off the wall if they're having an anxiety moment. I try and figure out one, making sure that we're meeting their pain meds needs, right? So I know a lot of times pain meds are not looked upon favorably, but if you don't have a therapeutic level, and if the pain med is not high enough or frequent enough, right? If we're only using pain medications when the pain hits rather than routine, you can always try it for a couple of days. Let's try morning, noon, and night for Tylenol 3 times a day. Again, I'm not a physician, but making sure that pain meds are met, honestly, will take away a lot of the issue. Um, Trying to redirect them with things that are really comforting. Music is a wonderful option. We didn't talk about this today, but music, especially between the ages of 15 to 25, research has shown that's the most impactful for any person. So trying to find some music that they really connect with, that you can sit and listen with them, and trying to have someone being with them to be a comfort and support as well.
Okay. Um, what strategy do you recommend the most for discouraging wandering, I guess?
I would say trying to figure out what they want to do the best. I love that we have such a great opportunity in California. We have so many days of sunshine. So a covered patio with maybe a little fountain and the ability to garden, right? So not bending over, having a raised patio garden. If they love pets, having some pet volunteers maybe from your community come over, going to a park and watching the kids run around, just doing things that are in tandem, and finding something that seems useful and that would be part of everyday life. So again, one of my closest friends taking care of her parent, he just loved to help around the house. So she would be cooking and he would chop vegetables, right? So it's okay to give someone who is older, who's been using a knife all their life, the knife to chop vegetables and help make soup or salads and anything at home. So really trying to make this part of living rather than just more of the monotonous, oh, let's play a game or let's do this, right? Something that's gonna make more sense for them.
Okay, and then we're getting some wonderful compliments in the chat box, by the way. Just thanks for the presentation, and they appreciate the examples. And then, what about redirecting someone who wants to go home? Any great tips on that?
Yeah, that's always a tough one because home, a lot of times I like to describe it, it's a mindset, it's a reality that is not going to be accessible to them anymore, right? So it could be a time in their life when they were independent and when they were taking care of someone like a spouse or children, um, and they're not going to be able at this point to get that feeling back. So whatever is the most comfortable, even when moving into a community, we always try and tell families bring things that resemble home, right?
Yeah.
Bring their favorite comforter, bring their a stuffed animal, or bring pictures. You can put pictures on things now. You can put them on canvas, you can put them on a pillow of their family. The further back the photos go, the more likely they are to recognize them. And so making it as almost as resembling of home as you can, certain smells, right? If they're from whatever their culture is. So having certain foods are real big on making someone feel like they're at home. Music that is culturally appropriate for them as well makes a big difference. You could have music running all day long. And
Yes.
that's a huge one that people often don't think about.
Great tips, Erin. One more question. In the beginning of the presentation, you talked about about CTE. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so I don't know if people have seen, oh shoot, there was a movie about it a while ago. It's basically it's called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So it's basically a degenerative brain disease that mimics dementia. It's progressive and it gets worse over time. So a lot of the football players that you see, um, this is really sustained by repeated head injuries, and so they're still doing a lot of research on this. It's mostly based around breaking blood vessels in the brain and the trauma that occurs thereafter. So your brain is really the consistency of jello. And so anytime it gets jolted or hit, it's like prolonged concussions. And so it really affects lifespan. It really affects quality of life. It affects the way our brain processes judgment and reasoning. And so that's one that shoot, I'm so sorry. It's got Will Smith in it. So if you do you know what movie I'm talking about? There was a whole um oh, Concussion, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
So that's kind of if you want a um quick overview, but yeah, it's very tragic and it happens a lot of time to people who are younger, especially in sports, and it's very debilitating because their body's still very strong and their brain is just failing them. It's very sad to watch.
Yeah. I was watching something about that
Hmm.
recently, and the presenter talked about how your brain is like jello in a
Yeah,
box.
yeah,
Literally your
yep,
skull is just it's it's not that protective. I mean, we have
right.
to take steps to protect our young people and
Yes.
our youth. So, all right. Yep, boxers, MMA fighters, football players suffer from CT often, says one of our guests.
Yes,
All
agreed.
right. So I do think that brings us to the end of the questions. And again, getting lots of accolades in the chat box. Erin, so you are one of our favorites. We're so happy you were here today, and we appreciate your time and your expertise